For decades, our examination of the uncanny phenomena clinging to the U.S. southern border has been geographically constrained. We've meticulously cataloged the high strangeness that takes root on the American side. The sightings of impossible creatures, the temporal distortions, the inexplicable disappearances experienced by those wearing the badge. But to truly understand the nature of this terror, we must accept a darker, more difficult truth. The border is not a perimeter, it is a seam, a ragged, torn edge in the fabric of reality, and the overwhelming majority of the malignant, psychic pressure originates from the south. To limit our scope is to misunderstand the predator-prey dynamic at play. The desperate travelers attempting passage are not merely navigating a physical landscape of desert and steel. They are traversing a spiritual gauntlet. They are the exposed nerve, the raw, vulnerable tissue upon which the border's true inhabitants feed. The same monstrous figures, the same disembodied shrieks, and the same malicious intentions reported by the patrolling agents are encountered by those trying to evade them. Only for the migrant, the consequences are often terminal, final. Tonight, we commit to the full, unnerving scope of this analysis. We venture into the heart of the darkness, far past the chain link and the watchtowers. We cross the threshold of dread, where the human cost of desperation is paid in the currency of the soul. Our first point of observation is the bifurcated city of Nogales, split between the Mexican state of Sonora and the United States Arizona. This duality is critical. Before the stark imposition of a definitive physical barrier, prior to the political hardening of the line in the early 20th century, life was fluid. People commuted, communities intermingled, and the surrounding settlements acted as vital, temporary arteries. The construction of the wall, however, severed these veins. When cross-border travel became restricted solely to the central checkpoint, the peripheral communities that once flourished outside the urban core began to hemorrhage life. Residents moved inward, abandoning the small clusters of homes to the desert's reclamation. These settlements did not simply decay, they became psychic sinkholes, drawing in and concentrating the residual suffering of the displaced. In one such forgotten village, a horrifying, almost liturgical ritual takes place during the relentless heat of the cloudless summer nights. It is tied precisely to the apogee of the moon, a moment when the lunar influence is said to thin the veil between states of being. As the prescribed hour approaches, the atmosphere in the few remaining occupied homes shifts from cautious vigilance to absolute terror. The final living residents know the protocol: complete, absolute isolation. Every door is barred, every window shuttered, every aperture sealed against the intrusion. The streets become desolate, radiating an unbearable tension, the silence of a community holding its breath. Then, the auditory evidence arrives. Drifting down from the eroded foothills, a sound that defies description, a chorus of rasping, mournful moans. It is not a cry of pain, but a sound of eternal demand. Soon, the procession begins. A small but profoundly unsettling group of figures emerges from the encompassing blackness. They do not walk so much as they shuffle, their movement suggesting an anatomical decay beyond simple skeletal framework. They move slowly, methodically, weaving their way from structure to structure. Their physical state is a testament to the passage of cruel time and harsh environment. The individuality of their faces is completely lost, eroded down to grinning, vacant skulls encased in brittle remnants of skin and cloth. Their actions are repetitive and focused. Long, desiccated fingers scrape against the timber and the glass of the closed homes. Their voices, thin and dry, repeat the same chilling request: ayuda, agua, comida, help, water, food. These are the spirits of migrants who perished in the desert long ago, denied the most basic human necessities by the very people whose doors they now haunt. Their bodies were never recovered. They remain lost, suspended in the desert's purgatory. Their purpose is dual and equally terrifying. They seek aid, yes, driven by a primal, unquenched thirst that has survived death, but more profoundly, they return as accusers. They are a physical manifestation of a moral trespass, a sin of omission committed by the living. Their annual journey is a supernatural indictment, forcing the descendants of the guilty to confront the consequence of turning away the dying. They are a profound, palpable warning that the desert does not forgive cruelty, and the debt owed to the dead must always be paid. The encounter lasts mere minutes, a horrific, slow-motion parade, before they retreat back into the earth from which they rose, leaving behind a silence far heavier and more permanent than before. This phenomenon reveals that the trauma of the border is not merely historical, it is cyclical and metaphysically enforced. Moving east to the immense urban sprawl of Ciudad Juarez, we find a city saturated with tales of the supernatural, yet grounded in a brutal reality. Luciana Torres grew up here, intimately familiar with the constant ambient hum of danger, both human and spectral. She was a witness to the porous nature of reality even before her personal encounter. The concept of the other side wasn't a philosophical debate, it was a known, adjacent territory. Her routine walk to her aunt's house crossed a local point of legend, an innocuous residence housing an elderly woman rumored to have engaged in youthful santeria or brujeria, dark witchcraft, a practice that had left her ostracized by the God-fearing community. These rumors often attract or concentrate certain energies. On this particular evening, Luciana's rational mind failed to protect her. Situated in the narrow, shadowed chute between the witch's house and the neighboring dwelling was an entity that defied both physics and biology. It was a figure of impossible verticality, a creature of pure negative space stretching far above the single-story roofs. Its form was hyperskeletal, thin to the point of anatomical parody, yet radiating a profound, heavy gravitational presence. Her gaze became fixated on the limbs. One arm, grotesquely long, hung down, nearly dragging on the dusty ground. The other, impossibly extended, was reaching through an open, low window of the elderly woman's house. It was not tapping or scraping. It was probing, searching, like a tool designed for a singular, chilling purpose. The immediate cognitive defense mechanism, the brain's attempt to normalize the impossible, was to categorize it as a sculpture or decoration, perhaps a macabre excess left over from the recent Day of the Dead celebrations. A temporary reprieve from terror. This logical assumption was brutally inverted when the head of the colossal figure began its slow, deliberate rotation. The movement was not fluid. It was a mechanical, effortful pivot, fixing its attention not on the house but on her. Two eyes, glowing with a cold, sickly light blue luminescence, locked onto Luciana. This was not an illusion. This was an entity that had detected her. Paralyzed by a fear that felt less emotional and more biological, Luciana maintained her walking path, resisting the urge to run, which she instinctively knew would trigger a pursuit. She continued to her destination, deciding with a chilling presence of mind that to speak of it was to invite its sustained attention. Hours later, the return journey confirmed her worst fears. The gap was empty. But as she passed the house, the front door opened. Two paramedics, or perhaps neighbors, emerged bearing a shrouded stretcher. The load was covered, suggesting the fragility of a corpse. The subsequent town gossip provided the context. The old woman had been found dead that very afternoon, lying on the floor directly adjacent to the window where the creature had been reaching. Her body language, described by neighbors, was crucial. Hands clutched to her chest, face contorted in a mask of absolute, paralyzing terror. Luciana's terrifying insight transcended simple ghost stories. She had witnessed a dimensional bounty hunter. The woman's dabbling in dark magic had apparently opened a precise, exploitable vulnerability. The colossal figure was not a random specter, but a collector that had slipped through the boundary, crossed the divide between the living and the dead, and used its specialized anatomy to reach in and perform an immediate, lethal extraction of the soul. Luciana was not just a witness to death, she was a witness to the process of final acquisition. The psychological landscape of the border is defined by folklore, and no figure is more pervasive than La Llorona, the weeping woman. In the town of Agua Prieta, This ancient legend provides cover for a biological and metaphysical monstrosity. The setting is a dilapidated ghost town, a former staging post for smugglers, a place heavy with the residues of fear and desperate negotiation. It was forbidden ground to young Ethan Ibarra and Louise, and therefore their chosen territory. They knew the local fauna, the ocelots, the pumas, and knew how to coexist by avoiding confrontation. Their violation of the curfew one evening exposed them to something that operates outside of established ecological law. As they prepared to leave their den, Louise seized Ethan, their shared attention drawn to a growing sound, the undeniable, sorrowful, wailing cry of a woman emanating from the end of the spectral main street. This sound, instantly identifiable to their shared cultural memory, triggered immediate, visceral fear. They were convinced they were about to encounter the classic folklore entity, the ghost of the weeping mother. What materialized was a profound refutation of the legend. It was not a woman, living or dead, but a chthonic predator. A massive feline creature, exponentially larger than any native cougar or jaguar. Its most horrifying feature was its dermal armor. The back and sides were covered not in fur, but in sharp, bony projections, quills that resembled wickedly pointed daggers. The sound of its massive, non-retractable claws clicking against the hard-packed earth was a chilling counterpoint to the weeping. Its entire demeanor suggested a hunting machine, its jaws working in anticipation. The entity stopped directly outside their crumbling hideout. Its eyes, glowing faintly, scanned the environment. Then, the horror was fully realized. The creature threw back its massive spiked head and emitted the exact, chilling, perfect facsimile of the woman's desperate wail. The sound was not a residual haunting, it was a biological weapon. The lamenting hunter moved down the ghost town's axis, pausing at each deserted dwelling to repeat the wail. It was deliberately deploying a perfect sound cue, the primal sound of human distress, to draw out any hidden frightened survivors or new arrivals. It was an intelligent, specialized lure designed to exploit human empathy and fear. It abruptly ceased its vocalizations, snapping its head sharply to the side, the action of a predator detecting movement. It then accelerated to an impossible speed, bounding directly toward the documented location of the border wall. The morning brought the confirmation, official reports of Army helicopters, and the discovery of multiple deceased migrants near the wall. The bodies were savaged, and the immediate explanation provided by authorities was the all-too-convenient mountain lion attack. The truth, witnessed by the two terrified boys, was far more complex. The creature was using the acoustic vulnerability of the human psyche, the ingrained fear of La Llorona, to corral and neutralize its prey. The wail was not sorrow, it was a calculated hunting signal. The creature is a manifestation of the desert's capacity to weaponize cultural trauma against the vulnerable. The boys' commitment to never straying beyond the town limits again was less about avoiding a mountain lion and more about avoiding a sophisticated metaphysical trap. The terror experienced by Mario during his final attempt to cross the Sonoran Desert introduces a new, profoundly unsettling element: vocal mimicry as a predatory strategy. Mario, hampered by a twisted ankle, was relegated to the rear, isolated in the immense dark, a psychological and physical position of extreme vulnerability. The initial deception was subtle, a disembodied voice in Spanish warning him that the coyote escort was lost and leading the group to certain death. This was followed by a plea for water, claiming injury and entrapment. The confusion was intentional, a slow erosion of Mario's certainty. The first act of violence, the silent, successful abduction of the coyote, ratcheted the tension from fear to primal panic. The group, now without their guide, proceeded blindly into the desert. Mario, maintaining the vulnerable rear guard, was then subjected to the full psychological assault. The voice returned, but its source was now their most recent trauma. It delivered the initial warning, "The group is lost," but it spoke in the perfect, unmistakable tone and inflection of their missing coyote. The predator had not merely killed the guide, it had assimilated his identity. This vocal theft was followed by the familiar, desperate plea for water, also delivered in the coyote's voice. The creature was attempting to draw Mario away from the group under the pretense of rescue or aid, exploiting the bonds of human concern. When Mario finally broke and turned to flee, the attack was immediate and visceral. A shadowy figure exploded from the darkness. It was not a man. It was a saurian abomination. Powerful, strong hands gripped his legs, pulling him down and attempting to drag him into the blackness. In the panicked, sweeping beam of the flashlight, the entity was briefly, horribly illuminated. A savage, reptilian visage with flat yellow ovular eyes and sharp predatory fangs. The skin was covered in tan scales, tough and leathery, and its fingernails were long, sharp talons that sliced deep lacerations into Mario's exposed flesh. The attack was interrupted by two desperate shots fired by another migrant using the coyote's discarded pistol. The creature paused, hissed, and then delivered its final chilling pronouncement, again, using the coyote's perfect voice. "You will not survive another night in the desert. The flesh will be picked from your bones." This was not the speech of a territorial animal. It was the articulate threat of a thinking, malicious entity. It was a declaration of ownership over the territory and the souls within it. The creature fled back into the dark only after 2 more rounds were expended. Mario survived, but the encounter inflicted a wound deeper than the lacerations on his legs. He had faced a predator that utilizes mimicry, psychological warfare, and physical predation. It is a perfect weapon for the border. It isolates the desperate, mimics their trusted guides, and then consumes them, leaving behind a terrified, scattered remainder. His deportation was the least of his trauma. His soul was permanently marked by the encounter. We return to the point of synthesis. To dismiss these accounts as individual hallucinations is an act of intellectual cowardice. When the tales of the Nogales accusers, spectral figures tied to historical moral debt, the Juarez collector, an extra-dimensional soul harvester, the Agua Prieta lamenter, a physical predator using cultural distress as a lure, and the Sonoran voice thief, a reptilian entity employing identity mimicry, are placed against the consistent, corroborating testimony of professional law enforcement operating in the same zones. A terrifying pattern solidifies. This is not a region haunted by ghosts. This region is inhabited by specialized predators. They are not random. They are contextually tailored. They weaponize the deepest vulnerabilities of human transit: thirst, isolation, empathy, and dependence on a guide. The annual rising count of unidentified human remains along the border is a tragic metric. But the true investigation must now pose the impossible question. Are these individuals dying merely from the predictable dangers of the desert, heat, exposure, dehydration? Or are they the casualties of the border's unseen ecology? Are they the successful harvests of entities that exploit the spiritual and psychological terrain as much as the physical one? The border is the ultimate laboratory of desperation. It is a natural aperture that draws in the lost and the vulnerable, creating an environment where the most ancient, most powerful, and most unsettling forces are granted license to operate. The threshold we spoke of is not metaphorical. It is a chthonic reality, and we have merely cataloged the shadows of its teeth. The analysis is disturbing, the conclusion inescapable. The suffering at the border is feeding something vast, ancient, and profoundly malicious. To turn away now is to become complicit in the silence that allows these entities to thrive. This channel is dedicated to the unnerving truth, to stripping away the comforting lies of folklore and confronting the analytical horror of the real. Our capacity to generate these deep dive analyses, to meticulously cross-reference these disparate accounts into a coherent, terrifying narrative, relies entirely on the support of those who refuse to accept the official narrative. We have an extensive, cross-indexed archive of related cases, classified government reports, and private interviews that are too volatile for general release. This work demands resources, isolation, and absolute intellectual freedom. If you believe the truth must be pursued, regardless of how terrifying it becomes, then hit the like button, subscribe, and tell us below. What is the most terrifying entity you believe the border conceals? We will be waiting for your answer.